College Ras or police, what's the most memorable event you've had with college freshmen? Got a duty call from a worried mom one Saturday afternoon. She hadn't heard from her 18-year-old daughter in a few days and wanted someone to check on her. Sure, I said. I go and knock on her door. She's there, just studying. She promises to call her mom. Next day the student died. She got very sick. Called a friend. Went to the hospital. And was dead in a matter of hours. I wasn't the last person to see her alive. But I might have been the last to see her healthy. Years later. I can't shake the feeling that her mom had some sort of premonition. Not an rat or a cop. Last year my school decided to set up a beehive research setup on a recently closed porch to one of the dining halls. This setup wasn't protected at all from stupid students. One night, a few smart people decided to go up to the beehives, take one, and throw it into a nearby dorm's elevator. They then proceeded to press every button so that the elevator would stop on every floor in the building. Whole damn building had to be evacuated. Said people were expelled. College Ra here. My hall and I had a prank war, them versus me of course. It began with me returning class from one day and feeling that someone messed with my shoes. We have a pretty intense honor system so everyone leaves doors open. I realized that all my left shoes were missing. Instantly had a feeling it was one of my residents and texted him, "You know why I'm texting you?" He replied, "Everything alright?" We had a pretty lengthy conversation of him sending puns related to the missing shoes. Found out they were hidden in my room all along. Semicolon. I had to get him back so I end up turning his entire room upside down. The desk. The chair. You get the idea. Semicolon. It's quiet for a week. Then I return home one day and notice that my awfully bland bed has turned into a pink covered stuffed animal sanctuary. Come to find out that they literally switched my bed with a girl resident's bed on a different floor. Semicolon. Not to get sentimental on a poster like this, but I genuinely miss that hall a lot, all while loving the one I'm currently part of this year. A girl delivered a baby in her dorm room and claimed she didn't know she was pregnant. To make matters worse, it was a Catholic all-girls school and the baby was delivered by the biology teacher who was a nun. I was once notified by one of my residents that her mattress had been misplaced and she wanted to know if she would be charged for it or if she was good. I told her she would most certainly be charged for it, and then, mysteriously, the mattress reappeared the week before summer closing. I heard through the paper-thin door of her room later that it had been at a frat house for a while, and I dreaded the thought of what happened to it. Very first night on call by myself. Watching the news in my dorm room. See my resident's mugshot. The housing staff were unclear on the procedure of what to do when a resident is arrested for murder. Former Ra here, I have to. Same group of guys who regularly congregated in the room above mine. It was a 2-story townhouse style dorm. 1,2. 30 AM ish. In the morning I'm woken up by loud yelling and cheering accompanied by what sounds like someone attempting to smash a hole through my ceiling with a sledgehammer. I storm upstairs a bit scared of what I might find. It was 6 completely sober 18-year-olds cheering and their angrily Boston Irish Catholic friend as he danced a jig in steel-toe work boots. It was too ridiculous to even be mad. I told them to shut up and went back to bed. 2. One night I was hanging out with the guys and we were watching something on TV. One of the owners of the room went to bed while everyone was still hanging out in his room. Fast forward like 40 minutes. He sits straight up in his lofted bed. Lets out a long high-pitched giggle and shouts, "It's a titty," and then passes back out. I hope I made their freshman year as fun as they made my senior year. After Thanksgiving break, all of the peepholes had been stolen from every door on the second floor. Apparently they just twisted right out and somebody needed a collection? Edit. I guess technically there were still peepholes. But they didn't have that little glass part that makes it look like a fisheye lens. Apparently they just twisted right out. Both my neighbors are now missing their peepholes. More to come. Thank you for this knowledge. International kid went to the fish market. They bought live crabs and lobsters then proceeded to keep them in the fridge drawer alive for days. Safe to say the vegetarians and they vegans refused to use the fridge and it caused so much grief and drama. A long time ago. Group of freshmen in a 4-man suite got permission for a pet somehow from the housing office. They didn't specify it was a f***ing pig. The smell was unbelievable. That lasted a couple of weeks until the dean of students finally gave me and the housing office the power to threaten expulsion. Kid got kicked out of his fraternity and had to move into campus housing. A few weeks later he stunk up the whole hall because he was smoking a bong in his room. I wasn't a hardus. So I usually just told them how obvious it was. And to do it somewhere else so they don't get caught by someone who cared more than me. Well, when I went in, I found easily more than $100k worth of prescription drugs, weed, cocaine, and alcohol. Dude was obviously running an operation out of his dorm. So we had to call the cops and now I have the title for biggest drug bust in university history. I went to a small liberal arts school in the middle of nowhere Tennessee in mountains and forest. You could store your hunting rifle or bow at the police station. And during certain times of the year, hunt on the larger 13,000-acre campus. One of the infamous boys' dorms layout was 2 doubles connected by a bathroom. I wasn't the RA for this dorm, but I heard about it in one of the larger meetings. Apparently, the head RA received a complaint because one guy's suitor had shot and killed a deer and hung it in the shower so he could skin and butcher it. Blood was everywhere. TLDR. Boy shoots deer, skins and butchers it in communal suite shower. Not an RA but a first-hand witness. My freshman year of college I lived in a building with super long hallways and went to school in central PA. The 2 days that we were affected by Hurricane Sandy, 2012 I think. And by affected I mean severe rain and higher than normal winds. Classes were cancelled and we were told not to leave the dorms unless it was an emergency. So what happens when 400 plus boy college kids are forced to stay indoors? Start a multi-floor jousting tournament. Each contestant had to sit on a skateboard and try to knock their opponent off their skateboard while being pushed at pretty decent speeds. It's definitely one of the best unofficial freshman icebreakers I've participated in. Sadly got busted not too long after people started yelling war cries down the hallways. I have 2 really memorable RA experiences. Purdue late 90s. The first is a really terrible one. I was in RA at the same time as Jay Severson. Jay was shot and killed by a resident that was a big drug dealer. It shook Purdue heavily. But especially the RA, were actually called counselors, community. The other, me specific. One was a freshman who had a father that was super hard on him. One night I came back to the dorm and he's in the hall with a bottle of Jack. Just hammered. Purdue dorms are dry. But I told him just get rid of it and go to bed. 5 minutes later he walks to my room with the bottle and I told him I have to write this up now. I never wrote people up. He then just breaks down. Snot says breakdown. He was planning to kill himself that night so I spent the next 2 hours talking to him and convinced him to see someone professional the next morning. He passed out in my room and in the morning he called a real professional and began therapy. I didn't write him up for alcohol. I dealt with a shitty ghost once. RA for 1 year. In my area there were a handful of RAs plus our road who shared a group chat so we could ask questions as we went about our business. One day, I'm checking my chats and found this exchange between another RA and our road. Hey road. What's the policy on getting an exorcism done in the res halls? Road. What do you mean? RA. 2 of my residents want an exorcism done in their res hall. What happened was this. These 2 residents would occasionally go use the bathroom and find shitty in their toilet. But neither of them were the ones who took the shitty. So, the only logical explanation was that there was a shitty ghost in their res hall whose only purpose was to shitty in their toilet and not flush. Not that. You know. The building was hella old and probably didn't have plumbing as great as it did 50-60 years ago. This ghost could have flung shitty across the room. possess people. But nah. Its sole purpose was to shit in toilets. Asterisk. Semicolon. Edited for formatting and grammar. Not an RA or a cop. But I went home one weekend and came back while my roommate was out. I had been back for 15 minutes or so when my RA knocked on my door. I opened it up and saw her staring a hole through me and finally said, "We need to talk about what happened this weekend." I asked, "WTF are you talking about?" She said, "Last night was unacceptable and if it happens again we'll press charges." I was pretty confused and repeated, "What the FCK are you talking about? I have been gone all weekend." My roommate apparently got drunk. Poorly, tried to sneak in a girl after opposite sex visiting hours were over, 2 AM, and when the person at the front desk person caught him, knocked over a bunch of stuff, poured a bottle of Gatorade on the floor and told the girl, "Run and don't look back." I laughed but the RA didn't see the humor. Not a freshman story, but too good not to tell. A guy in my complex had a 21st birthday party that got super loud. Had to key in along with campus PD because the neighbors called them first. Cops proceed to check IDs. And the birthday jackass drunkenly wraps his ID in a $20 bill and tells the officer to check with Samuel L. Jackson. Turns out he was so drunk he'd both forgotten he was 21 and thought bribing campus PD was a good idea. The cop frog marched him outside. Had a come to Jesus moment with him. Gave him back his ID and the money. Wished him a happy birthday. And told him to keep it down. Kid from a vegan family, who was already thin, began to look worryingly thin. It turned out he wasn't eating because he wasn't sure what he could eat and was basically eating nothing. In the end he dropped out and he went back to his family in the middle of nowhere. Kind of sad actually. Poor kid. Cops came and dragged a kid off because he roofied and sexually assaulted a girl. Think that's the event in my life that really confirmed for me that there are really super shitty people that you'll encounter in everyday life. RA here. Typical story of a freshman girl getting way too drunk. And I escorted her to the hospital with the ambulance. The girl is squirming all over the place so they ask me to come back in the room to watch her while we wait for the PA on duty. PA finally comes in. The girl is still squirming all over the bed, unresponsive to anything the PA is telling her. Finally, the PA goes to put the needle for the IV in and warns the girl of a slight painful poke. The girl abruptly stops her squirming, looks the PA dead in the eye, and yells, "Do it, you won't." I couldn't contain my laughter at this moment. Not an RA. But freshman year I lived in the second floor of the dorms and my 3 roommates decide to start playing soccer in the hallways. I didn't know they were playing soccer until I got back from the library around 11:50 PM. I come up the stairs. All my roommates were lined up against the wall and the RA points at me and says, "Oh. Since you're here, you're getting written up." Semicolon. I told her I came from the library, I was wearing my backpack and had 2 textbooks in my arm. She didn't buy it and got written up. Semicolon. Screw you, Martha. Edit. I had to attend a beating after I got written up and after 3 minutes, I was off the hook. My other 3 roommates were not so lucky. I was an RA but in 2 years I only witnessed one dude passed out half in his room and half in the hallway. And one room of idiots dumb enough to smoke in their room. My worst night was actually my side job of student custodial staff on weekends. Someone had puked in a plastic grocery bag and dropped it down the trash chute. Picture a water balloon of puke tumbling 3 floors and hitting the bottom. When we did our trash room rounds we got to discover the aftermath. I showered on the clock after that one. Last weekend of my senior year. I'm packing up everything to send home after graduation and get a call on my room phone. One of my residents was so drunk at a frat party that his friends brought him back to the dorm but he stopped in the middle of a road and tried to punch cars as they drove past. Cops, not campus security, the town cops, picked him up and brought the all back to the dorm. I wasn't even mad he was that stupid. Just impressed. Another guy was so drunk he was running away from the RA on duty and jumped off the second floor balcony, breaking his leg pretty badly homecoming weekend that year. I was in RA in college. One of the guys in our co-ed dorm, first and third floors female, second floor male, shat on a placete and cooked it in the basement's communal oven. We had to evacuate the dorm and open all the doors to air it out. Edit. Shat on a plate. Not a place. I dated our RA, which was way against the rules, but it was on the sly. Anyhow, long story short, a friend on my floor tells me she's banging a professor. I tell my RA girlfriend because I'm concerned and naive and all that, and she tells me a different girl on the floor is also banging that same prof and had just disclosed it to her a couple of days prior. In the end, I don't know how many fresh this prof must have been banging overall, but she did report him, and he wasn't teaching anymore at least. Not in RA, but freshman year I had a floor that wasn't the most well liked. I don't think the 2 exit signs in our hallway survived any weekends during the year. The problem was we were the middle of a residence hall, so guys from other wings would come and just knock down our exit signs, and of course we were blamed for it. Semicolon. My room was also next to the bathroom, where I will never forget a maintenance guy finding more than 150 beer cans in the ceiling of our showers, with him yelling what the hell and apparently getting hit on the head with multiple cans. Semicolon. We got sat down and lectured, saying we would be charged for the beer cans and the exit signs because we couldn't prove it wasn't us. Early in fall semester, during Greek rush, when freshmen attended more parties than classes, someone spiked the punch at a party with PCP. It was the kind of punch freshmen would dip a solo cup in, chug down, and go back for more. After a bunch of freshmen wandered back to my floor, several of them began hallucinating. Imagine a half dozen people wandering the halls, out of their minds. Imagine one of them was nearly 7 feet tall and was fluent in Russian, and would speak only Russian while hallucinating and banging his head into the cinder block wall. We had to wake up a fellow student who happened to speak Russian to translate. The guy banging his head was repeating, over and over, "I know that you know that I care, that you know that I know that I am cold." Not in RA, but when I was a freshman I lived in the dorms as part of a 10-person suite, 5 double rooms. Highlights include one suite mate getting charged with second-degree assault when he swung on his roommate, requiring me and my roommate to subdue him until the police arrived. At one point each of all 5 rooms had at least one drug dealer living there, giving birth to our suite's nickname as the pharmacy. When my roommate moved out to be closer to the people he sold pot to, I got a replacement roommate who moved in on a night I was away. I came back to the dorm to find out he got arrested for assault on his very first night. Only met the kid once, when he was escorted back to the building by the police to gather his possessions before his arraignment. Suite mate jumped from his 3rd floor balcony to a tree 6 feet away and slid down it like a fire station pole. There's more, but a lot of it is a blur due to my own excessive drug abuse. Living in that suite led to me needing to really reconstruct academics in the following year. I'm not in RA, but I heard this from the one I had my freshman year. They had this kid who never left his dorm and all he would eat was Doritos, Oreos and soda. So over the course of the 2 semesters the kid's health kept declining. He ended up getting diagnosed with scurvy in bloody 2015. Whoa. My RAs were way different. At most they were sophomores. Only did it for 1 year. And partied with us. Practically no one lived on campus after sophomore year. My best freshman story is about a guy who was down the hall from me. He took too much acid at a bonfire party, stripped down naked and proceeded to run across campus. Apparently he darted out in front of a car and was it. The driver got out of his car to see if he was alright and the guy punches the driver and steals his car. He then drove it into a tree 100 or so yards away. Edit. My RAs, being friends at the time, did let me know later they actually did take their job seriously. I was in RA in college. And there were a lot of pretty ridiculous nights. But one in particular stands out. Freshman 1 sleeps with Freshman 2's girlfriend. Freshman 2 breaks down Freshman 1's door and stabs him 3 times with screwdriver. Knee. The raw response to ruckus on floor. Freshman 3-50 try and cover Freshman 2.